What's up, y'all? As the regular season begins and the preseason comes to a close, I wanted to take a minute just to have this quick conversation with y'all about being cut from the NFL. Now, I was fortunate enough to play 6 years in the NFL, but a lot of that came with obstacles. As you know, many people will tell you the NFL stands for not for long, right? And that's obvious, for many reasons. But one thing that I want to consider is the guys in the room, people who have been through it, who have gone through that process, the one percenters, right? You think about high school football throughout America, only 1 to 2% of guys actually get an opportunity to make it. And for many people, making it is just having an opportunity to be in preseason. Realistically speaking, if you cut the roster down, I think it's now at like 80 guys you can bring in. Maybe that's changed since I was in the league. I retired in 2022, but I believe it's like 75 dudes. They have to cut down to 53. It used to be 90 on a roster. So a lot of changes were made. And obviously for me and myself personally, one thing I can say, I felt it. I felt the tension and the pressure of knowing at any moment I mess up, I'm not productive, I don't know my playbook, right? I'm not cohesive with the guys in the locker room. That's my job, So even with cuts, my first 2 years, 2015, 2016 season, I was able to make the 53-man roster. Now that was the grace of God. It was a miracle for many reasons. We had some guys, key role players, they ended up having injuries. Timing was perfect for me. It worked out to where they needed who I was, the kind of guy that I was. And the reality also is if that team doesn't need you, chances are there might be another team that does. So it was always preached to us, put our best foot forward. So my first years, I was able to actually make the roster. My third year, I also made the roster, but I had a lot of ups and downs. A lot more uncertainty came along with that year because it was technically my contract year. A year that if things worked well for him, we would have to pay him. Let's see where he's at by the end of the season. As well as that, I battled injuries. So every year felt like it would be my last. Every week felt like any moment, the Grim Reaper, the guy who goes and brings you upstairs to release you and get you to sign your contract away and basically kicks you out of the stadium, right? The Grim Reaper was going to come knocking on the doors, go into your locker room, letting you know, hey, it's time for you to come upstairs. And everybody knew the pressure. Everybody could feel that. My fourth year was actually the moment I got cut. For me, as an undrafted free agent, that was actually the year I thought was the most productive. I was actually the most prepared. So the unknown of that ended up propelling me into free agency and what that might look like. That was the very same year I signed a contract, the biggest contract that I had signed, with no guarantees or like minimal guarantees. So there was a lot of politics to it. Team didn't want to pay me to what, that year. There was some other guys in the race. I had battled injuries. There's all these things that coincide with the reason why you make the roster. I didn't make the roster. The team actually brought me back in middle of the year. This was my 2019 season. This was kind of like the decline down in my career. And then at that point, I kind of bounced around looking for a job, and maybe a team picked me up. I go do a tryout. It was a whole process. It was frustrating. And there's a lot of feeling of rejection you go through, feeling like I'm not worth it anymore. I don't bring the value that they want. And you got to heal from that. So the one thing I'll say is NFL players are beginning this transition and they're working out of the NFL. The one thing and most valuable thing is get a therapist. Get somebody who you can talk to, who you can confide in, who has a definition, a label for the things that you're going through so that you can reason with the stress and the feeling of like joblessness, uncertainty, going from having a 4-year career in college to then nothing, trying to figure out where you're going to go next, the uncertainty of talking to your free agent, all the feelings that coincide with your career as you deal with the NFL cuts. That's my advice to you as you're up and coming. Maybe you're a collegiate guy, get somebody you can talk to. You know, somebody who can really see you for who you are, the value of what you bring outside of yourself as an NFL player. Listen, it's temporary, y'all. So you got to know who you are, who your identity is. For me personally, that's in Jesus. But it took me retirement to really fully see that for myself. Get it before I did. Listen, find him, know him, you know, and if listen, maybe Jesus isn't the answer for you in this moment, in this season of your life. The best thing you can do is pick up on what's happening in your life. What does this mean when I go through rejection? What does this mean when I go through uncertainty? What does this mean when I feel like I have value and worth, but people don't necessarily see that? And how can I really express myself in it? So that's my last part. Get to know Jesus and find you a therapist. That's all I got. Appreciate y'all listening. Peace and love.